everyone, I'm Miss Mandia and welcome to my channel. So, it's been a while since I've posted a new video on here. That was definitely not intentional. I actually had a lot of video plans that I was really looking forward to, but, well, it's been a bit of a rough year for me. A few months ago, I fell into one of the worst periods of depression that I've ever experienced. There was a good deal of time there that I found it really difficult to find joy even in my hobbies like gaming and video editing. And that is a very awful feeling. But don't worry, I'm in therapy and doing a little better these days. And things haven't been all bad. In the time I was away, I adopted a new rescue dog named Chiro, and he is the sweetest little angel. He had a rough past and was unfortunately hit by a car, which left him with some permanent nerve damage, but looking at him, you would never even know it. Thankfully, he can still walk, and in the time we've had him, he's regained so much mobility and just has such an incredible zest for life. If you want to hear more about him, I'll save that for the end of the video. But anyway, I'm really excited to get back to being creative and making videos for you here. Things are still difficult, but I'm definitely doing better than I was a few months ago, and I'm finding a lot of my passion returning, which I'm really grateful for. I thought it might be better to ease back into things with a more casual video. When I watch vlogs, I usually find them very calming and centering, so my hope is that putting one together myself will help me keep things in perspective. So without further ado, here is a very gaming-centric vlog I put together during a weekend in July. I hope you enjoy. So this morning I'm going to be playing Moonlighter, which is an indie shopkeeping sim with roguelike dungeon exploring. I played it a few years ago when it came out, but I got distracted by something and never ended up finishing it. So I recently decided to start it over again, and it has been extremely fun. I just unlocked the final dungeon last night, so I think I might be able to beat it this morning. So yeah, that's the plan, and we'll see how it goes. So in Moonlighter, you play as a merchant named Will, who spends his days running his shop and his nights procuring merchandise from the village's mysterious dungeons. I'm at a point in the game now where the shopkeeping has become somewhat obsolete. I really took my time with the previous dungeons, so I've had a lot of opportunity to make money and get the strongest weapons. Now I have more money than I actually need, but I still think running the shop is really fun, so I'm doing it anyway. Most of the gameplay here involves playing with pricing. You watch your customers' reactions to see if something is priced too high or too low and adjust accordingly. Their impressions can change based on demand, so if you sell too much of something, it can drop in value. And you also have to be quick on your toes so that you can serve customers and take down thieves on occasion. The dungeon crawling side of things is also really fun. There are 5 dungeons that you explore sequentially, and they all have unique artifacts and enemies. Different enemies require different combat strategies, and I've enjoyed figuring them all out. Button mashing alone won't get you too far, especially in the early game, and it feels really rewarding. Once you learn how to deal with each enemy, you're able to clear rooms faster and make the most of your dungeon run. Same thing with bosses. They're always daunting on the first run, but once you go back a few times, you can get it down to a science and just blitz through. Another really cool thing here is that inventory management is kind of like a mini puzzle game. Some of the artifacts you find have curses that limit where they can be stored in your bag. So for example, you might only be able to place something on the top or bottom row, or maybe an item will destroy whatever is placed diagonally next to it. There are also good curses in later floors, like ones that will duplicate an adjacent item or send something home so you don't have to worry about losing it if you die. As a merchant, you always want to maximize the value of your bag, so managing these curses in the most effective way is important, and personally I think it's really fun. Anyway, we are heading towards the endgame now, so I'm going to cut the footage here to save you from spoilers. Okay, so I just beat Moonlighter. The ending caught me off guard a little. It was interesting, but overall it was a very solid game. So now I think I'll go and take Adam and Churro on a little picnic, and then maybe later this afternoon I'll get started on my next game. So when we go on these picnics, I really like to bring little solo player board games. I've recently stumbled down the rabbit hole of print and plays, which are games that you can find online and then print out yourself at home. At the moment, my favourite is a roguelike roll and write called Dungeon Pages Overworld Adventures. This one's cool because it's only $8, and every month until the end of the year they send you a file for a new character and dungeon sheet, so you get a total of 12 by the end of it. In my opinion, it's well worth the price because it's a really high quality game. Once you learn the rules, it's an easy one to pick up and play, and it has a low time commitment, so it's perfect for picnics or cafes, or whenever you want to pass a little bit of time with some light strategy. How it works is you choose one of these adorable woodland characters to play as, and a set of dungeons for them to explore. You roll a set of dice and use the numbers you get to create a pathway from the start point to the treasure chest. If you're able to create a path that follows a certain number pattern, you get to keep the experience you earned that level and then use it to get better weapons or relics to take into the next dungeon. It's a bit of a puzzle because you need to make sure you're following the placement rules while also filling out the sheet in a way that will maximize experience gains. And you have to place all of your dice, so sometimes that can throw off your work, as can the enemy encounters. It's kind of like RPG Sudoku, so if that sounds cool to you, you might enjoy it. Okay, it's time to start a new game, and I've decided to go with the first game in the Mega Man Battle Network series. For some reason, I've been really craving this game lately. Something about the prospect of a bright, light-hearted GBA RPG just sounds really good right now. Plus, I've heard it's really short, so I think that'll help with the general overwhelm I've been feeling lately. So yeah, I'm gonna get started, and I'll let you know what my first impressions are. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, Battle Network is actually a Mega Man RPG series that was originally released on the Game Boy Advance. This Legacy Collection is really cool because it includes every single game in the series. There are 6 numbered games, and then the last 4 each have 2 different variants, kind of like Pokemon. So that's 10 games in total, which is pretty incredible. I don't really have any experience with the Mega Man franchise, but because I love old RPGs so much, I really wanted to give Battle Network a try. And I have to say, after playing the first 2 hours today, I can absolutely see why this series has such a cult following. First off, I need to talk about this battle system because it's one of the most unique things I've ever seen in an RPG. It's sort of like a mix between action, active time, and tactical combat. Mega Man attacks using battle chips, which are essentially special moves with ranges that follow grid-based rules, similar to what you see in a tactical RPG. But you fire them in real time, which I think is a really interesting take on the combat. The chips he has available at any point are shuffled in from a supply of 30, which you can customize throughout the game, so there's also a deck building element to it. It's like all of my favorite things wrapped up into one system. I love it. And the story's pretty interesting so far. It's set in a futuristic world where everything is computerized and connected to the internet. Although, maybe in 2024 it's not as futuristic as it was then. In this game, Mega Man is a virtual NetNavi, so essentially an AI program. The main character, Lan, can use Mega Man to jack into different electronics, where he can talk to the software and fight viruses and stuff. It's giving me strong Soul Hackers vibes, just because of that real-world, net-world juxtaposition. I know I'm not far into it yet, but it's already giving me the exact kind of feeling I was hoping it would. And I'm itching to play more, which is always a good sign. I'll let you know how the rest of my playthrough goes in my summer wrap-up video. So this morning, I thought it would be a good idea to finally sit down and pick out what I want from the Steam summer sale before it ends on Thursday. There's a handful of games I'm planning on grabbing, so I thought I would share them with you. Now, I love gaming on my PC, but because I prefer to purchase games physically when I can, I usually reserve Steam for smaller indie titles. My Steam library is mostly a collection of adventure and puzzle games. Something I really enjoy doing is spending a Sunday morning playing a one-shot adventure game from start to finish. It's always a very relaxing and recentering experience for me. So I like to keep a lookout for interesting games that I can finish in 2 or 3 hours, and that's the theme of most of the stuff we're looking at today. So first up, we have this one called Refined Self: The Personality Test Game. Apparently it's an adventure game that tracks every decision you make and then uses that information to calculate your personality type or something. It sounds like such an interesting idea, so I have to see what it's all about. This next one I picked out also looks pretty interesting. It's an adventure game called TikTok Isle. Can't go wrong for 79 cents, although it's usually only $1 anyway. It seems like it's heavily inspired by Back to the Future, which is one of my favorite movies, so I don't mind that at all. This is exactly the kind of thing I love to have on hand for those one-shot sessions, so it's an easy yes for me. And then we've got this puzzle game called Kami, which I think is about unfolding origami or something. I don't know that much about it honestly, but it has overwhelmingly positive reviews and it's only $1.60, so it seems like a nice one to have handy for when I want to relax. I'm also grabbing this one called Lie Eat, which is 60% off at $1.19. It looks pretty promising. I'm pretty sure it's a mini RPG with some sort of mystery element. It seems like it has tons of personality. I'm really impressed with these designs. It's giving me very strong NIS vibes. The reviews are saying it has a great story, so I have a feeling it's going to be a good one. And then I also want to get Birth, which is a point-and-click adventure. I think you're supposed to collect bones and then build a friend out of them or something. It looks pretty wacky and disturbing in a weirdly aesthetic way. This is the most expensive one on my list at $7.14, but Halloween's coming up and I think it'll be fun to play then, so I'm just gonna go for it. So that's everything I'm getting from the Steam store, but I'm also gonna be grabbing a few Steam codes through PlayAsia. They're having a sale where you can get 5 eligible game codes for $10, which is a pretty awesome deal for some of the ones they have available. The first one I grabbed is Tiny Echo, which I am really excited about. It's a puzzle adventure where you play as this precious little postal worker who's delivering letters to a bunch of interesting creatures. I'm so intrigued by this one. I think it's going to be pretty high up on my playlist. And then for the rest of the bundle, I chose Aviary Attorney, Tohu, A Winter's Daydream, and A Story Beside. A Story Beside is an RPG Maker game that looks like it has a really similar feel to the Moon, so I'm really looking forward to that one in particular. So all up, that's 10 games for about $28, and all but 2 of them are $2 or less, which is very cool. Overall, I'm really happy with my choices. I think later this afternoon I'll try out Refined Self because I'm really eager to see how it works. But first I'm gonna take a little break and then maybe work on some crafting projects. I'm in the middle of a really cool cross stitch I want to show you. Alright, so here is my current cross stitch project. Some of you might recognize this as Sue from Grandia. I actually started this a year ago when I was replaying the game, but I ended up putting it on hold for ages, which is something I do more often than I'd like to admit. While I was gone from YouTube, I was actually diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, which was an extremely eye-opening thing. I've always had a lot of executive functioning issues that have impacted every single aspect of my life in pretty major ways, I'm not gonna lie. Being late diagnosed is a very interesting experience. It's like everything about you suddenly makes sense, and there's almost this period of grief for all the time you've spent struggling to just survive like a normal, functioning human. And I mean, it is still something that heavily impacts my day-to-day life, but, knowing is half the battle, and my life has definitely changed for the better now that I can implement more effective strategies to combat the things I struggle with. Anyway, sorry for the ramble, but that knowledge has been a pretty big development in my life, and to be candid with you, it is one of the main reasons I've always had a hard time keeping a consistent schedule with my YouTube channel. But I am hoping that's something I can get a little better at going forward. So anyway, this is how far I got in this afternoon's crafting session. For full transparency, this is about 5 hours of work. Cross stitch is definitely a hobby you have to have patience with, but I usually find the end product to be pretty rewarding, so I think it's worth it. So later that night, I did end up playing Refined Self, and it was an interesting experience. When you start it up, you're met with the most beautiful, bittersweet music that I think does a good job at setting the mood of the game. It's a little different from what I was expecting. The personality test is actually baked into the story. You're playing as a robot who is undergoing the test themselves, so it's basically a game within a game. I've only done one playthrough, so I haven't seen all of the story yet, but it seems like it deals with some pretty deep themes. The robot is experiencing a good deal of grief, or maybe even guilt, about the death of this person she calls the Doctor, who I believe is her creator. It's very vague about what happened before the game started, but you do see glimpses of her time with the Doctor through flashbacks. As for the personality testing element, I think it's really cool, but I'm not sure how I feel about the execution of it yet. Like it said on the Steam page, every small decision you make as the gamer does influence the outcome of your personality analysis, but when you start up the test, it emphasizes that you have limited time in it, and even gives you a gauge in the top left to remind you of how many more actions you have left before the game ends. And it also tells you what personality outcomes each of your actions are contributing to. I wish it wasn't so candid about that, because it's gonna influence the way you play the game. Whenever you're doing any kind of psychology test, it's gonna be difficult to get an authentic result if the participant is aware of exactly how their answers are being scored. I was hoping the personality test stuff would be less on the nose, but I will say, having the objective of the game be to just play and do what feels right to you is a pretty refreshing experience. Having that constant reminder in the corner takes some of the calm out of it for me, but it's still a really nice concept. I'm wondering if the personality type you get has some significance for the story. It is designed for multiple playthroughs, so I still have a lot of unanswered questions. I'm looking forward to getting to the bottom of everything, and I'm interested to see how it ends up getting there. It's an interesting game for sure. Oh, and if anyone's curious, in this playthrough the personalities I got were clergy, philosopher, and researcher. So that is the end of my weekend, but as promised, I'm going to take this time to chat a little more about Churro. This guy means the absolute world to me. This video took me a long time to finish, so at the time of posting we've had him for almost 3 months, and he's continued to make so much progress in his recovery. In the past month especially, he's become so much more confident. He warmed up to us immediately, but he was still a little shy and I think nervous to get too comfortable. But now he's very bold and he's actually a bit of a menace sometimes. He's started barking at people when they come to the door, which is bad, but also kind of sweet because he wasn't really vocal at all when we got him. Tony says maybe it's because he feels like he has something to protect now. He's also a lot more playful. He loves to steal socks and dig in piles of blankets. I can tell he's feeling more at home now, which makes me really happy. But mostly he's a very calm and cuddly dog. One of his favorite things to do is just to sit in the grass and soak up the sun. And he really looks up to Adam, which is so sweet. I can tell Adam has a soft spot for him because he's a dog that really likes his alone time, and Churro can be pretty annoying and clingy, but most of the time he doesn't mind so much. I feel so lucky that we have 2 perfect dogs now and that they get along so well. Churro's accident did leave him with some permanent nerve damage, so unfortunately he is completely incontinent. And that really breaks my heart, but it is a huge blessing that he can still walk and run, so if that's the worst of it, I think we're really lucky. I'm so glad that we're here to help him now. I can tell he was struggling to manage those issues on his own, but we've been able to find strategies to help him out, and he's been so much happier and freer to just be a dog. He's made such a difference in my life, and I'm so grateful that of all the humans in the world, I get to be his. He actually did have a family before us, but the rescue told us they didn't want to keep him after his accident because he couldn't walk. I don't know the details of the timeline. He was rescued from the streets, and I really hope it's the case that he was lost and then got injured and not abandoned because of it. I know I shouldn't judge, but I don't understand how anyone could possibly not fight for this little angel with everything that they have. I'm a strong believer that dogs are part of the family, and that's a hill I would die on because they are the most loyal and loving creatures that look up to us and trust us unwaveringly. Of course, they deserve everything. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around to the end and for being patient with me this year. I hope you're having a lovely day, and if you're not, hang in there. Life is a wild ride, but there are tons of video games and people and dogs and cats that make things a little easier. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!